had some feedback that I was always cut out in my videos, so I am standing back for this one. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, the Ink Reader. Today very late to give you a quick wrap up of what I read last year, in the last month of the year, a month and a half, and turns out that actually those month and a half were the most proficient reading was for me. So I read a total of 14 things. I am gonna wrap up though only 11 here because some of those reads were in my reading the higher rated books on Goodreads video, which I already put up. You can find the link down below or up. So I'm not gonna go through with those, but without further ado, I'm gonna wrap up the 11 things that I've read to end 2020. I've not done any statistics, but I promise that from my January wrap up onwards, I will put statistics up again as I used to. So just bear with me, just because I just want to wrap this up. So last time I actually did a wrap up was just before Halloween, and I wanted to recommend some horror books. So these are all the books I've read since then. So yeah, it wasn't a month and a half, it was 2 months. And yeah, before we start, this is today's pin. I love it so much. In addition to the 11 books, I've read just 2 mangas, and I read them at the beginning of the month of November during my commute. One was Godchild by Kaoru Yuki. This is volume 2. This first volume is featured in my Reading the Most Disturbing Mangas Ever Written, and this is the story of this lord. Basically, is the son of a rich man who is an expert in poisons, and he gets himself in a lot of trouble where he has to resolve mysteries. It's kind of a gothic Conan, if you want, to a certain degree, and I did enjoy the second volume as well. I think I gave 3.75 stars to these. Slightly less interesting than the first one, but still I'm gonna show you some of the art. And then the second manga I've read is Magical Girl Apocalypse Volume 3. This is a post-apocalyptic manga where one day this kid is in school, a weird girl appears out of a window, and she starts to kill off pretty much everybody, and everybody she kills come back to life. So it's kind of a zombie apocalypse if you want, but it's really brutal. And again, it's featured in the same video, Reading the Most Disturbing Mangas. I'm gonna show you some of the art, what I can. Yes, this should be okay. I think I liked this more than the second volume, but not as much as the first one, which is still my favorite as of now. I will continue on with the series, I believe. I'm just curious to understand why these girls appeared and all of that, so that kind of mystery was interesting. There is a character that appears in the second volume, which is, I really don't like him, and I don't like that side of the plot and the way he's used. I think it's just disgusting, but apart from that, all the rest I really enjoyed, and I'm gonna continue, probably give another couple of volumes and see how it goes. The first book I have read since my last wrap up is Talking with Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. This is a non-fiction that belongs to the Penguin Psychology publications, and I have came across this author basically because I was researching the Amanda Knox case related to my university and my degree and my dissertation, and then I stumbled upon this man, and boy am I glad that I did so, because as you can tell, I absolutely love this. This is Gladwell explaining to us in a very easy to understand way why we are so bad at reading strangers, why we kind of make judgments on strangers' intentions, and you know, if they are good people, if they are bad people, or if they want to hurt us or not, or if they are trying to deceive us or not, and all of that based on hints we think we get from them. And he explains why we get these things so wrong and why we are so bad at reading strangers. And he goes through real life cases, from, for example, the Amanda Knox case, to some miscarriage justice cases, or cases where spies got away without being particularly good at what they did, and no one caught this spy. And the reason why we don't is because we are programmed as human beings to work in certain ways. So he explains that, and he explains also what happens when some of us are not programmed as the majority, and what happens there, and the consequences of both sides. So it's really extremely interesting. It's just highly entertaining after all. You don't have to be a major in psychology or, you know, a sociologist or any of the sort to really enjoy this. It just reads quickly, super interesting, real life cases, and it explained very, very well. He holds your attention throughout all the book. I absolutely loved this book. I think so many inspirations, so many topics for me to further explore. I do believe honestly that everybody will probably benefit from this, and at the end of the day, even if you don't learn anything, which you will, it's just highly entertaining, and it talks about so many cases that we're all familiar with, some of them at least. I gave this 5 stars. Like, I gave these 5 stars probably when I was just at this point in the book. I already knew. Then I listened to the audiobook of Cemetery Boy. This was Unscripted. So this was the story of a boy who belongs to this family that they're all Roux or something of the sort. I apologize if I get any of the mythology wrong. It's been a while since I've listened to this. Basically, he wants to be a Roux too, but because he was born a girl, the family is saying, no, you cannot be a Roux. And then one day his cousin goes missing. He and a friend go looking for the cousin, and instead they found another ghost boy, and they go on a hunt for the killer of the boy and all of that. It's just, yeah, I've explained this really poorly, I realize that. Anyway, it's a YA paranormal where there's got this boy who meets a ghost guy, and it's really cute and fluffy. I really enjoyed this. I gave this, I think, 4 stars. I have to say that the mystery, so the hunting the killer thing, just really takes a backseat in all the story. So if you are here to get a mystery or that, that's probably not the book for you. However, our protagonist and the ghost and all the friendship or the friend group around him, they're just so nice. It's just really cozy, heartwarming, with a bit of a mystery YA. I've read Return of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is a thriller, my second Ruth Ware book, and this is about this au pair that accepts this job in the countryside. They live in Scotland. When she gets to the house, she finds out that the parents are leaving for a trip of work, and she is left with the kids, these girls in the house. This house is really old, but at the same time very technological. And what happens is that at the beginning of the book, you know immediately, and I think it's even in the synopsis, that au pair is accused of murdering one of the children that was left in her care. And you find out basically, going back, what happened and why the au pair ended up where she is. And this is based on The Turn of a Screw, which I never read, and I decided to read this because I wanted to then go and watch The Haunting of Bly Manor. For some weird reasons, I thought, because both were based on the same story, the same book, I believe that if I watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, I would be spoiled on these, and I didn't want to, because I heard people really enjoying this and they really enjoy thrillers. I was really wrong. You can definitely watch The Haunting of Bly Manor and then read these. Is nothing to do, pretty much nothing to do with each other. I would honestly not even think they were based on the same story in a million years. So yeah, if you don't be dumb like me, for example, which probably you aren't, so that's not really an issue. I have to say of this, it's definitely a page turner. I read this really quickly, which is kind of unusual for me. I also have to say that this is kind of spooky. This kind of spooked me. I think the atmosphere that Ruth Ware creates is the most spooky thing. Not only what happens, but it's more the way it's told to you, and that's a compliment for Ruth Ware, definitely. I called one twist, I didn't call some of the others. However, I wasn't too excited when they were revealed. I was more into, I need to know, and when I got to know, I was like, oh, okay. The ending for me was okay. I didn't see that coming, but at the same time, I didn't feel like, if you know what I mean. At the end of the day, they kept my attention and just wanted to know what was happening. So even if I didn't particularly then find groundbreaking, the revelation and all that, I still really enjoyed the journey, and she spoke to me. So 4 stars for these, and yeah, I will definitely be checking out more by her. And I proceeded to read Blood and Honey by Shelby Morin. This is book number 2 in the Serpent and Dove trilogy. This is the story of this girl. She is stealing something one day. She is chased by this connoisseur, a guy who works for the church and is like a guard, and they end up in a scruffle in a theater where basically people see them, and it seems like he's beating her up. So the church leader says, listen, you know, to make this mess okay, we'll just tell them that you're gonna get married. They marry because apparently then it's okay to beat up your wife. And what happens is that she's knocked her teeth, but she's actually a witch. Is way worse, because connoisseur, I'm not gonna try again, these guys working for the church hunts witches, and witches are outlawed. So yeah, she has to kind of hide from him that she's a witch. Of course, they're in this forced marriage, but don't like each other. She's got a big secret, clearly, and yeah, it's just a bit of a mess. The first one was really highly entertaining. The second one, nothing really happened. Like, we go around in circles. I described this as you decide to go on a trip, on a field trip, whatever. You decide to start from point A and get to point B. Backpack, you got your food, you got your stuff to survive on this journey. You go and you walk and walk and walk and walk, and then at the end of the day you find yourself where you started in the morning, so point A, but without backpack or without food, if it makes sense. So yeah, basically it was a trip around for pretty much nothing. I didn't mind writing. I still read this really quickly. I wanted to buy the first one and then read the second one and then kind of have the whole trilogy, because I'm not really into YA anymore but much these days. I do read them, but not as much. And so I thought, oh, this is one I like, so I might get, you know, keep hold of this. Now I'm debating, I don't know, I wait for the reviews for the third one, see how it goes, and maybe listen to that on audio, and then see if I want to acquire all the trilogy or just gonna sell this. Then I read a book that was suggested by one of my lecturers in crime and law course that I was taking, and this is Guilty Until Proven Innocent by John Robbins. John Robbins is a journalist that put together this book based on miscarriage of justice that happened in England, and he explains the case in the chapter and why the law basically got it wrong, and how it's easy for people that are innocent to basically get accused of crimes they didn't commit. Now, the first thing I have to say about this is that I didn't like the writing. I think it was really messily written. There were basically, each chapter is kind of a case, but then it would bounce back to another case in another chapter without giving any warning. There were a lot of names, surnames used, and you just kind of, like, people get mixed up. I didn't like basically how he wrote this. At the end of the day, that's the truth. I just didn't like it. I also thought that at any point in this book he gave me enough proof or explanation on why the accused was so innocent. Like, he didn't convince me in the majority of his cases that the accused was actually innocent, which is a big deal when you write a book about miscarriage of justice, because you're basically giving the message, you know, oh, this man is innocent, and I didn't get that. I was like, well, you are saying this man is innocent, but you don't give me exactly reasons that would convince me. So I can imagine why a court or a jury wasn't convinced if that was presented to them. They didn't give me enough on the case, I believe, for me to say, oh yeah, for sure, there was a miscarriage of justice, which is the point of books like this. So yeah, didn't appreciate that. I have to say that all the cases that are discussed in the year are really interesting, and although it didn't convince me these men were innocent, I still kind of wanted to find out. So I still thought, oh, that's interesting, I want to explore more, I want to know more. So for that, I'm glad I read this book, and I took away inspiration for further research, so that was good. I ended up giving this 3 stars. And talking about a book that could have been written better and still it's really important read, was a bit of a stretch, by Chris Atkins, The Diaries of a Prisoner. This is a non-fiction, as the one I just mentioned, and is written by this film director who got into Wentworth, I believe, is the prison because of fraud. Basically, he scammed someone, or he did something illegal regarding his company when he was producing one of his films. He got caught and he gets like 5 years in Wentworth to pay for his crime. And what he does is explains his journey through Wentworth. So basically he stayed in prison for a set amount of years, but I believe in Wentworth he stays only 9 months or something of the sort. So this is just his experience of Wentworth, not of the rest of his sentence, which I believe is spent in open prison or something of the sort, a really low category prison. So it just goes through the most shocking part of his imprisonment and all of that. And again, this is one book that I detested the guy. I really didn't like him, I'm sorry. And it's nothing to do with his crime. I do believe honestly that getting to Wentworth 9 months and staying there for a crime he committed wasn't fair, because again, it's a whole new topic about justice, and let's not delve into that. But let's say that I do agree with him that a lot of things do not work in the prison systems, that budget cuttings and all of that are terrible. And then he makes a point of saying people enter prison and they get out worse than when they came in. So you're not actually reducing crime, you're creating better and more angry criminals, which is definitely a really important point. So for that, I'm really grateful for this book. I just happened not to particularly like the guy himself, and because it's written in first person, he's talking about himself a lot, about his experience in there and about his family and background, his thoughts and so on. I just didn't click with him. I also didn't like that at one point he becomes a listener, and basically a listener is someone, a prisoner who goes in emergencies to speak with other prisoners that might be self-harming, that might be suicidal, that might be particularly agitated. They ask for a listener, someone goes. Horrible how untrained these people are. I mean, it's better than nothing, 100%. But I think I wanted first of all to listen more, to know more about the training that he got for that position, which he discussed. Oh yeah, we got some sessions, and then he goes, and he doesn't go a lot into what he actually did as a listener. So that's why that's another thing I didn't particularly appreciate about this. I wanted to know more. And also at one point he kind of gets basically in this cell with this guy who murdered somebody, and he's teaching this kid how to disguise and eliminate proof of what he did, which I thought it was just, no, you just, even if you did that, which you shouldn't have to begin with, you don't put in the book, you don't tell us that I helped someone to get away with murder. Basically you got this important role as a listener. You don't tell us about that, but you tell us when you are basically helping these kids destroying proofs. It's just, yeah, no, anyway, I didn't particularly like the guy, but I think the message behind is really, really important. And if you want to have a sneak peek of how prison works and how horrible it is, that's definitely something you might want to give it a try. I gave these 3 stars, really stretched. Then I listened to the audiobook of Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. It's a kind of historical fiction fantasy, I'd say, and where you've got Addie. Addie is born in the 17th century, I believe, and she definitely doesn't want to get married. She doesn't want basically to live the life that her parents have decided for her. So she escapes and she makes a deal with the devil. At the end of the day, he's never named as a devil, but he is the devil, or what we would consider the devil, I believe. And makes this deal where she basically gets out of this marriage that she's about to go through with, and she gets to live forever, but in exchange for that she will never be remembered by anybody. So if she enters a room, you see her, you talk with her, she gets out or you get out, and when you re-enter the room you don't know who she is. So everything starts again, and she is immortal. So when you meet her, you kind of bounce back from present day, 2014 I believe actually. And I really enjoyed the writing first of all, and I did really enjoy the message that this came with. And I have to admit that although it was slow and definitely not a fast-paced read while I've listened to this, but I still thought it was really interesting. A lot of the throwback slow this down a lot, yes, but by the end I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. The end, I was really glad with it, but I just wished we got a bit more. It's definitely rooting for something to happen, and then it never did as I wished in the end, if it makes sense. So I don't want to spoil anything, but let's say that I was rooting for the supernatural, if it makes sense. Let's just say that. The end is not exactly that. I don't know, I don't want to spoil this. Anyway, this is going around BookTube plenty these days for a good reason. It's not for everybody though, because the slowness has to be considered. If you like fast-paced stories, this is really lyrical and slow, so it might be not for you. I gave this 4.5 stars because at the end of the day, what the story brings, the messages and what the way it makes you think, I think it's really well done. Then I have listened to Pet. This is a YA story, and I think it's the story of this girl. She one day gets in the studio where her mom is painting, or she had left actually a painter. She ends up wounding herself on the paint, and the blood seeps through the canvas, and then a monster gets out. And it is actually not really a monster, but it turns out there is an angel looking for a monster. So basically this is a dystopian society where now crime or monsters are completely destroyed because the angels came and kind of cleaned off, and all of a sudden the angels left because there was no more monsters to chase, and now there is a monster apparently, and the monster is more close to our protagonist that she'd like to, definitely. So she has to help this angel who looks like a monster to go and find this real monster. It's a bit complicated. It's a really weird story, I'd say. Really enjoyed the writing, really enjoyed the writing. I think I'm definitely checking out more by the author. It does feel young to me, so the story was a bit bare, if you want, which I get why. I get that the message was really simple, and I just wanted to have more depth, where probably because of the target audience we didn't get that. But it was a nice experience. I definitely recommend this if you're in the target audience. It is also diverse and it's very nicely written. I loved Pet. I loved him so much, and I'd even consider reading a sequel if there was ever one, definitely. Then another book that I've read, suggested by the same lecturer, the same course, was The Secret Barrister, Stories of the Law and How It's Broken. This is written anonymously by a barrister in UK. This barrister is telling us what the law should be, how it should work, how a court should work, and why it's not working as it's supposed to be. All the ways this is a big deal, and all the ways this must be improved in order for people to really get to justice. So again, important message. Hated the writing, didn't like the guy, and I think at one point he chooses to explain to us, or chooses an example one time where he defends his father from his two daughters who accused him of repeatedly raping them and abusing them for their childhood, and he basically defends the father and the father gets away with it. And I think with all the freaking cases you could have chosen, why putting this in your book? And especially because at the time I was reading a book about trauma and the consequences of trauma, and I could see how these girls were actually traumatized, and how a lot of the things that in court would appear like, oh, they're not definitely proof, or they are contradicting themselves, were actually probably the result of trauma. I thought it's horrible that you're using this case, and this just makes me hate you even more. Plus, it was not well written. It was confusing. I think I could have learned so much more if it was just done better, with more clear topics and messages, like for example this guy does here. Like I at any point I was confused, and both in this book and in this one I was so confused sometimes. So you can write non-fiction making it perfectly clear and making it flow nicely and keep it interesting, and they couldn't, basically. So that was one big issue. I gave this book 2.5 stars because at the end of the day what I've learned is very minimal considering how big this book is. And so yeah, maybe I should have a talk with my lecturer about books and, you know, well-written books, because no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I wish I could have given this more. I wish I could have learned more. Instead it was just really badly written. Then I have actually read The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. This was actually in my reading each subgenre of fantasy TBR, so this was for the series fantasy. I didn't know where to put this, so this went in basically reading Diaries, a fantasy series. So this is book number 2 in the Poppy War trilogy. Third book just came out. I'm gonna get my hands on that really soon. This is a fantasy based on the wars that happened eons ago at this point in China, between China and like in the East Asia area. And in the first book you got Ronin. She's a poor kid. She wants to go to military school. She studies hard to get in. She gets there and mayhem ensue, I'd say. There's also grim, dark fantasy. Ronin, she is savage. She's definitely the anti-hero, if you want. Speaking of Ronin, like, although in the first book I really enjoyed all her flaws, in this one I started saying, well, yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know, I didn't like her as much. I thought she kind of got on my nerves at some point, not all the times, but I kind of struggle with her a little bit more, and I'm all for bad characters. So I don't know if it's about the repetitiveness and her like really struggling to develop, and even if she has to develop for the wars, it's okay, but you know, just steadiness of her making the same mistakes over again that kind of bother me. I have to say that it was a bit slow for the first 3/4, and then there is the end, and then the pace picks up, and I really enjoyed the rest of the book. I have to say that also was predictable in some points in the beginning. Then it starts to become more interesting. Definitely there are some awesome moments in here. I'll just name them Icarus moments, love those bits. And I was really rooting for some of the characters in these, and so that's why the end kind of got me upset, because I just wished to have a sparkle of light in all this darkness. I just wished we were given that. I think instead we are not, but let's see how this is going. Love the characters. I love Neza. Let's see how it goes. But I'd say that if the first one was almost a 5 stars, to this I gave it 4 stars. But at the end of the day, I'll wait for the third book and to give a final judgment on the whole series. For now, it's a really solid series, and I really appreciate what she's doing. 100%. I just happen not to like the second installment as much as the first, but hopefully the third book I love more. And then the final one I've read for 2020 was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Now this is a non-fiction, also part of the Penguin Psychology Editions series that they're putting out. This was recommended to me by my workplace. It's really important. We do work with trauma. I do work in the emergency department with youth that are victims of violence, so we see all of that. We see them when they're really traumatized, so this was really interesting and important read for what I do. And this also goes to cover my European TBR. So Van der Kolk, although now he lives in USA, he's from the Netherlands, so I'll tick that box with this, and I've officially read the first one for that TBR. So never remember well if he's a neuroscientist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, one of the three. Whether he worked with trauma all his life, he researched trauma, he worked in a trauma center, he put together with his colleague trauma centers in USA, in Massachusetts, I think, I don't remember, sorry, it's been a long day. Anyway, he based all his work and his life on helping people overcome trauma. And this book here is him explaining in a scientific yet very digestible way how the body keeps the score, how trauma is processed by the brain, and how PTSD works, how anxiety, how depression, how a lot of things, eating disorders, all you can think of that's caused by trauma, especially in childhood, how that reflects then in adults, and how in behaviors, in what we see. So it's really interesting, because again, it's very tinily written, so it is not an easy quick read, but I honestly was so curious that I kept reading, so I read this fairly quickly. And as you can tell, there are so many tabs in here, because there are so many things I need to delve more into, and so many things I need to start implementing in my daily practice, in my work. So it taught me a lot. This book taught me a lot, and I think it taught me a lot, not only from my job, but about myself and my childhood, and how I process my trauma. So if you want to know basically why you're doing what you're doing today, what happened to you as a result of you being traumatized. And trauma can be anything, from really serious abuse to, you know, neglect, to any kind of trauma leaves a mark, and he tells you exactly why. So this is psychoeducation at its best, and I think it's part of being resilient, part of overcoming trauma is actually, personally I believe, understanding what's going on in your brain. He explains exactly what happens in your brain, biochemical, hormonal responses to trauma, and there are pictures inside for you to better understand what part of the brain are affected. He makes sense. So he's taking something that's so big, so abstract if you want, as trauma and pain, and he makes us understand, actually, this is what happened, this is what's happening in your body, this is why you feel like you cannot breathe, this is why you cannot put words to your feelings and all that. So if you want to learn about pretty much everybody in your life, because at one point in your life there were going to be, if not you, someone who's been gone through trauma, or someone you cannot understand, or someone who suffers from anxiety, depression, eating disorders, whatever, read this, because this is going to teach you what's going on. I'm such a big fan of psychoeducation that I cannot not stress enough how important it is that people understand, because by understanding trauma you also avoid traumatizing other people, if you want, I believe. So it's just a win-win, you know, from your trauma, for people you love, from, you know, people you work with, to you avoiding trauma as much as possible and avoiding causing trauma in others. So definitely 5-star reads was a perfect way to finish my reading year, and again, plenty of things for me now to study and for me to become better at what I do, basically. So that was it. That was the last thing that I read in 2020. I've already started 2021 and read good things. You'll find linked down below my January TBR, what I'm doing next year and this year, actually, all the reading challenges that I'm gonna have for all the months and all of that. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm gonna see you next time with my actually book awards for 2020. So I'm gonna wrap up the year for you soon, and take care, guys. Ciao.